Think vintage is too expensive? Hi, this is Ken from Vintage Card Voyage.
This is Mark.
And we're here today to go through decade by decade from the 1950s to the 1980s with some bargains or cards that we think are undervalued.
Yeah.
So, like we said at the top, I think the tier one players are expensive for sure. Like if you want a Jackie Robinson or Willie Mays or Hank Aaron,
Mickey Mantle,
those are expensive. Or on the basketball side, if you want a Wilt Chamberlain, those are very expensive.
Right.
And we're talking about rookie cards.
Yeah.
There's no denying that those might be out of people's price ranges. So, but we think there's a bunch of cards or players that are more affordable.
Have some potential for, growth in,
Yes.
in the hobby, hopefully.
Yes, and I think Mark is going to focus mainly on baseball.
Yeah.
I did a blend just like what I buy, so football, basketball, and baseball. So maybe let's start in the 50s.
Okay.
And you can pick a rookie card in the 50s, vintage card that you think is a gem or a bargain.
Yeah, and so my pick for that was, again, not by any means a bargain, but I think one that is less than it should be, maybe. And that is Frank Robinson, 1957 Topps. And I say that because I don't know that people think of him as tier one necessarily, but I think his career was tier one worthy.
I think so.
Only player, I believe, ever, until this year probably, when Shohei does it, to have an MVP in both leagues. He won the Triple Crown. He won the World Series MVP. He won an All-Star MVP. He was Rookie of the Year. I mean, just like one thing after another.
He's done everything.
Yeah. Obviously, a relatively successful manager. I think he was the first African-American manager, I believe, in the majors. And so almost 600 home runs, over 1,500 RBIs and runs and all these, sorts of things, nearly 300 batting average, did not get to 3,000 hits. But anyways, so his rookie card in the collector's range, if it was a 5, is only 300, a most recent price is $300.
Yep.
I think that's pretty good for someone who's one of the best.
Who's tier one,
ish.
Maybe tier 1.5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good bargain.
Yeah, I love that selection. And the reason that's also what I picked.
Oh.
So I picked that card as well for the 1950s. And I have that's a 2.5. I think
mine is a 1, unfortunately. But
what people will learn is that I don't need to collect at the collector's grade.
Yeah.
I'm okay with 1s, 2s, and 3s. In fact, sometimes I have a hard time deciphering between this is a 3 and this is a 4. So, but a few comps. So these are all recent purchases. PSA 3, 150.
Yeah.
PSA 2, 100, 123, 110, PSA 1, 104, 86, 89.
Right.
So now we're talking about under $100.
Yeah.
Whereas you think of a modern Wemby might be more expensive than Frank Robinson. And you rattled off all his accomplishments. He was also a manager of the year once.
I was going to say, I know he was I was a manager. I didn't know if he was a good manager necessarily or not, but he definitely got around.
Right.
Orioles, Giants, a few other teams.
Nationals,
right?
Nationals, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he probably was a manager in combination maybe close to 15, 20 years, so a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great selection. I have a couple selections in the 50s that I like that are not baseball.
Okay.
And for football, I like the Jim Thorpe card.
Oh, he's great.
So I don't know if technically this is considered his rookie card though, because the 55 All-American, he has a Gaudy was it Gaudi or Sports King?
Oh, the Sport King from like 1933 or something like that.
So that's probably considered his rookie, but he only really has 2 larger issue cards, and I love this set. And anyways, Jim Thorpe is like, I think most people know his accomplishments, but he's a 2-time gold medal winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2-time gold medal winner, and played professional football, basketball, and baseball. So better than Bo Jackson before Bo Jackson.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, in terms of price range, if you wanted a PSA 3, the last 3 went for $300, $280, $250. So you're in that $250 to $300 range. If you have lesser budget, a PSA 1 went for $136, and SGC 115. So
I feel like he's one of those guys too that like his accomplishments were so amazing, but they were also a long time ago. So a lot of people now just do not know anything about him necessarily.
I think most people would not realize that before Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders, there was Jim Thorpe.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a comp now. Is there a current athlete that plays 2 sports?
I'm sure there are. I can't think of who that would be. The guy that came to mind actually he's a 2-way football player, Travis Hunter from the Colorado Buffaloes. But yeah, I can't think of anyone who's gotten to that level of where they can play professionally.
I know there's some speculation that Mookie Betts is trying to be
on
the
bowler
tour,
right.
And I'm really rooting for him. I think
that would be amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then one more card in the 50s that I think is a bargain is this Bob Pettit. It's a 57 Bob Pettit and Topps card, and you can get that PSA 3 for one was sold for 102, another for 133. If you're okay with a one, $48. So $50 for Bob Pettit, and just if people don't know. Rookie of the Year in 55, MVP in 56, 4-time All-Star, NBA champion, which I didn't realize until I studied it, that he won a championship in 58, 2-time MVP, 10-time NBA first team, 2-time scoring champ. So, in terms of tiers, maybe he's tier 2 because people never talk about him.
Right.
But I look at those accomplishments and I'm like, that's like a tier 1 player.
He was on the NBA 75, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah. I think generally speaking, I think both football and basketball vintage are criminally underpriced.
Yeah.
Personally, that's just me.
Yes.
But yeah, to that point.
Yeah. So let's move on to the 60s.
Okay.
What is your selection for the 60s?
Mine is someone who I think is arguably the greatest second baseman ever. And I looked at his price sheet. I don't have his rookie card here. I will put that up in editing. But it's Joe Morgan, who obviously part of the Big Red Machine, MVP twice, World Series winner twice, 10-time All-Star. And multiple Gold Gloves, won an All-Star MVP as well. Great fielder, great hitter, one of the better power hitters as far as second baseman go, I feel like.
I feel like if Joe Morgan played today, he could have been a 40-40 player.
He had nearly 700 steals in his career.
He definitely could have done the steals part, but I would think that with the launch angle and emphasis on home runs, his average might have come down, but he probably could have got 40 home runs.
Yeah, and he was also a broadcaster for years.
Really good one too.
People really liked. And so his current collector grade rookie card is most recent price $121. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's really low
for, again, the player that he was, and in that in the era of the 60s.
Yeah,
so.
I think this is like if you're a father who has got a kid who's into cards, and they're chasing the young stars, and they're like buying these expensive basketball packs. I would just put $100 aside and go get a Joe Morgan rookie card. Your kid will be in the long term much more happy with that, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I wish my dad did for me.
Right.
And he wasn't into cards. He was a sports fan, but wasn't into cards. But I mean, just think about the collection that both of us would have had if we had some wiser, older person saying, hey, no, go buy Babe Ruth or Ty Cobb or Willie Mays or Mantle.
Right. Kirby Puckett and Wade Boggs, those guys are great, but, you know, I mean, people may have a problem with the fact that he was like, that he shares it with someone else. Like, it's one of those cards that the two players.
I think
or whatever,
it's Sonny Jackson.
Yeah, I know its last name is Jackson. I didn't know the first name, but yeah. So that might be maybe why it's not as expensive. I have no idea, but yeah, I think it's ridiculous how the pricing of it. So that's my pick.
Agree, and I think that's a great pick. My hat, what I'm wearing, is going to be a tell for what I picked, and I think this will be unpopular, but
Palmer.
I picked Jim Palmer.
Yeah.
And there, there's his top 66 rookie card. Palmer to me was kind of like the classiest player, and also became a broadcaster, a good one. But
and underwear model.
Yes, that's right. But I mean, just looking at his accomplishments, he didn't get to 300 wins. He got to 268, but he was 6-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ, and in 3 different decades.
Yeah.
So 66, 70, and 83. 3-time Cy Young winner, 3-time wins leader, 2-time ERA leader, 4-time Gold Glove, and 1 no-hitter. So to me, he's like maybe second tier of pitchers, but for my money in that era, I'd rather have Jim Palmer pitching than Nolan Ryan.
He was part of that in the 66 series, I believe, where they had 4 shutouts, and he beat Koufax, I think, in that.
I think that's right.
He was like 20, something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, in the 70s, when I was growing up, that pitching staff of Mike Flanagan and Dennis Martinez and Boddicker, just the great pitchers. So I kind of became a pseudo Orioles fan. I was always an Expos fan, but I kind of liked the Orioles.
Yeah.
But in terms of pricing, if you're willing to go lower grade, PSA 4 sold for $47, PSA 3 $38, SGC 3 $31. So you can get this rookie card for about $30, and his accomplishments, he's in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah. And then, in other sports, I won't go through all the details, but I'm a little biased here, but I've always been a big Fran Tarkington fan. So I tend to like the horizontal cards. And so his 62 rookie card is somewhat affordable to me. It's like you can get a PSA 3 for $105, $110, $87, so about $100. And he's an MVP, 9-time Pro Bowler. And when he retired, he led like every passing category.
I was going to say, he had the yards category until, I think, Marino broke it or something like that. It was for a while, I think for like 47,000 career passing yards, which at that point in the 80s, when I was looking this up, I was like, that's a lot.
Right.
At that point. Right. So, and he was also a great runner.
Yes. So a little bit of a precursor to the quarter, because back
Steve
in the
Young,
day,
kind of,
he was the only one who would scramble. That's why I loved him. It was like, oh, he makes things happen, Broken play, he makes things happen, and all those highlights. And maybe until Steve Young, there wasn't another person who could run like that.
Right.
And now it seems like that's a prerequisite. You have to make things happen.
Yeah, I feel like his maybe career is tainted in a way only because the Vikings never won the Super Bowl. Like they got there, but they never won it.
Yeah, so. And he's kind of like in Jim Kelly territory.
Yeah, the Bills.
He's known as a loser, even though he was a great player.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then in terms of 60s basketball, I picked John Havlicek. I think John Havlicek, we've had this discussion before. I think he's maybe a top 10 basketball player. If you look at his accomplishments, he's an 8-time champion. He was the 74 NBA Finals MVP, 13-time All-Star, 4-time first-team All-Star, 5-time All-Defensive Player, and then also an NCAA champ at Ohio State.
Yeah.
So I think Havlicek is always thought of as the second best player on all the teams
Right.
that he played
Russell
on.
or Kuzi.
Yeah, and even the team that won with Dave Cowens, I think Cowens got more of the attention. He was an MVP and Havlicek never was.
Right.
But I mean, this card is affordable. You know, in a PSA 3, one went for $26, $39, $37. So under $50, you can get a pretty nice shaped Havlicek, and that's a classic tall boy card where they didn't even make many cards. I was scrambling to find something because there just wasn't a lot of 60s basketball.
Right.
Yeah, that's my pick.